Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the second edition of Live on Lakeshore Drive. I'm your host, DJ Taco Supreme. And today we are having a panel discussion about the effects of Black Panther, the movie, on the black community. There's a lot of dividing responses from one side to the other. And what we were here to do today is discuss those sides. Today I have a good friend of mine who also has a show on Echo Rhythm Radio that comes on Tuesday at 8 o'clock Colored People time. Justin Dillard. Name of his show is Shit for Your Ass, where he tries to be as politically correct as possible. Justin Dillard. We also have Emmanuel Noisette, who is a film critic, who is here to keep the peace and the violence down between the brothers in their dialogue. We also have Brian Shine, better known as B Motherfucking Shine, who also has a show on Saturdays called Real Ish of the Day. And today we're going to discuss about the movie Black Panther. So, real quick, first question. What are your thoughts about the movie? Starting with Brian, like, just what are your thoughts about the movie itself?
For those of us who've watched the movie, I would love to hope that you saw how deep the movie went if you compare it to other Marvel movies and other superhero movies, action movies, and just movies in general. From top to bottom, it was a lot going on in there. One, it was, as some people will think, mostly white conservatives, is that it was a propaganda film when actually it's not propaganda. It is propaganda, actually. The propaganda is black unity. The propaganda of the movie was strength, elegance, morality, fathers and sons. That movie was just more than just action. That's all.
Do you think that that's propaganda that insults white people?
I don't see how, except for the fact that we threaten them with what we could possibly be if we had some unity, what we could do if we channel all of our interests in the betterment of our people, not saying that we don't want to be isolated from all races, but if we started to internalize our energies truly into building ourselves up, I feel like that's what the representation of Wakanda is. And I feel like that's why some conservatives are threatened by it. It's like, if they start really circulating their money between themselves, if they really start caring about each other, if we stopped all of the violence and not raising our children and just being baby mamas and being baby daddies, and actually not only had a family structure in our homes, but in our communities, what could we be? And for some people, that's threatening.
Aside from the effects, I'm going to get to you. Aside from the effects of the movie, I wanted to know the actual thoughts of the movie just itself, because we're going to get into the, how controversial it is. No, you haven't seen it yet, so I ain't going to put you on the spot.
No, you can. I want to say something also, even though I have not seen it. So
okay, Manuel, thoughts on the movie and the movie itself.
Thoughts on the movie, it's unapologetically black, while not being confrontational to general audiences, aka white audiences. What I absolutely love and appreciate about the movie is how much detail, care, and intention that was put into the film. It was so purposeful, given what it was going to mean for black culture, not just African American, not just African, but black culture. And for the movie itself, it elevates black culture in so many desperate areas that have always been needed and been lacking in terms of representation in film in general. So when we talk about black girl magic, that's there. When we talk about black royalty, that's there. When we talk about black liberation, that's there. All these different dynamics and themes are expressed in this movie to a certain extent that doesn't compromise black culture the way that it's been compromised in so many different depictions in other films that we've seen. We're not in chains. We're not sitting here being stereotyped as gangsters or thugs or people that are being in jail. I mean, it's literally a depiction of blackness that people can aspire to, or at least take some level of pride in. And that is what I think sets this movie apart from a lot of other movies that just so happen to have a black cast. And again, this really goes to a lot of the production, whereas you have a predominantly black cast, you've got a black director, writers, and producer. That's almost unprecedented when you have a movie that also has a Star Wars budget of $200 million. We always had black studios making black movies. That's not, unheard of. But to do it at this level, because when you put more money into a movie, the expectations also go higher. So what I loved is the fact that they raised the bar and they met it, and for some people exceeded it as well.
Do you think that they were sensitive in terms of making sure that it was presented right because of the culture that they were representing? Like, do you think that they went an extra step to make sure that they represented it right, opposed to, I mean, albeit that it's fictitious, but just do you think that they presented Wakanda right in reference to it being based out of Africa?
Without question and without doubt. I mean, all you really have to do is just do a little bit of research on Ruth Carter, who was the design coordinator for the entire movie. So much level of detail was placed in every single design, architecture, clothing. I mean, they would pull, like, for example.
So it wasn't arbitrary. It was
no. It wasn't just made up.
Right.
They literally went to specific tribes and looked at their different, clothing or attire or traditions. I mean, we got the brother with the ring lip, or with the disc in his lip. That's real. They paid homage to the cultures that had the necklace, links around their neck. I mean, forgive me for not knowing exactly what it was, but even down to the accents that were taken, they traveled to different locations to really pick up on the dialect and the accents to really emphasize this is what a culture would look like if it was never colonized by a European culture. So that level of detail, again, is so intentional. If you listen to the director, Ryan Coogler, he was so intent on making symbolism throughout this movie. They're literally the casino scene. You have everybody else dressed up in whatever, right? But the main characters, Nakia, played by Lupita, Okoye, and T'Challa, wearing red, green, and black.
I didn't peep that.
Pan African.
Right.
That was intentional. Like,
Right.
the director came out and said, I intentionally wanted them to wear those colors to represent the Pan African flag. So all of that is embedded into this movie, which to me is like, I've never seen that to that degree on that level.
And you know what? That's a good point to dispel, because of that detail throughout the movie, that it might not have been appropriated by the powers that be, because they wanted to make a clear understanding that it was represented at least with bits and pieces of the actual culture. But, Justin?
So, of course, I have not seen the movie.
What?
I wanted to go see the movie. My mother, who I go see every Monday, as a tradition, I just go see my mother every Monday, and we spend time together, and we do whatever we do.
That's very Wakandan of you.
It is. Even though it's based in African culture and holding up your ancestors and your mother and father and all that
Absolutely.
stuff. But in any case, I go do things with my mother every Monday. She didn't want to see it because, much like me, my mother doesn't like hype. So she wanted to wait until the hype dies down to go see it. So that's the reason I have not seen it.
I'm sorry. Does that affect the fact that you see it in the middle of hype?
No. I think the hype is died down. Now, what we're seeing is the people are coming for seconds. The initial hype of the movie has died down. People are starting to discuss and all that stuff, and it's getting into some other shit. But the initial hype that's going on isn't, because I'm looking at my timeline, and my timeline isn't as hyped about the shit, which points to my point that, you know, after the shit blows over, it's not going to be as much big a deal. But in any case, the point is, it's already kind of died down to the point where people who have not seen it, who are holding out to see it because they don't want to get caught up in the hype. They want to see it for the movie as for what it is. They haven't seen it yet, which is another reason I'm glad I haven't seen it. And that's to a point to my mother's. But I haven't seen it. What I have seen from the interviews that I've seen, from the spoiler alerts, from everything I've heard about it, the movie looks to be a great movie. I have my issues with it. I read the comics. So I understand, you know, what the storyline is and why they have to go in certain directions. I still don't necessarily believe that it had to be so if creative license is instituted in certain things. However, I understand why things are the way they are, but my issue has never been with the movie itself. My issue has always been with the reaction to it and the build up to it from the black community, as well as what's going to happen afterward based on the precedent of what's been going on cinematically with black people historically.
You know, I was going to give my thoughts on it, but you just prompted the question I want to ask. Knowing your view on the whole topic in terms of your gripe is the fact that we are quick to grasp to something without doing our research, not knowing the full scope of it, to downplay the movie, and you haven't seen that. Could the argument be the same towards you, that because we haven't seen African culture and we're hyped about it, you haven't seen the movie, so it's wrong to assume the effects of it being that you haven't seen it?
No, the difference is you can be hyped about something without appropriating it. Like, I did my research about Africa before I went there, and I'm not sure who else on the panel has actually been to Africa. However, I was able to do my research, and I bought black from Africans. The guy who I got the oil that I offered Bishan earlier is from on the west side. Sorry about that. Is from a place on the west side called African Arts and Objects, who I've been buying from since I was a teenager. So he told me he actually lived across from Fela growing up. He lived across the street from Fela growing up. So he's told me so many things about Africa before I even got a chance to go there, in addition to my own research. So, you know, there's really, to me, from my point is, in 2018, there's no reason for you to claim a culture that you hold near and dear, and then, but still not know anything about it. Like, people have never eaten any food. You've never actually talked to Africans or had a predisposed notion about who they are and what they've done and how they feel about us. You don't listen to any African music outside of Fela. You don't buy any African clothing. You don't get your hygiene products from Africans. Nothing about your life represents the fact that you come from African culture outside. It's a bastardized American version of where we come from. And it's just, in the information age, you have no excuse not to know where you come from. It's just no excuse for that.
Can I say one thing? I'm sorry. He asked you pretty much, is the way that you talk about other blacks who didn't do as much research but wanted to embrace something, you didn't like that, but you still sit here and you're commenting and having a gripe with something that, yeah, you may have done some research, but I'm quite sure you probably did research with more like-minded reviews as opposed to seeing it for yourself. So I just want you to, like, answer his question.
That's a great question.
That
was my question. Yeah, answer the question.
No, I actually did answer the question. My answering the question was in what I do in my own personal life. Is so me not seeing the movie is not the same as me me understanding and seeking out my culture and being a researcher and an avid lover through action of that culture. So the fact that I have not seen the movie versus the fact that I've done my research and I've eaten African food and I've talked to African people and I buy from Africans.
And you're doing it again.
It's not the same thing.
You're doing it again. You're still not.
Can I
go ahead,
get to the thoughts of the movie that I thought?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Jesus.
This is your show. I'm sorry.
Okay, I thought the movie was beautiful. You know what? And me and Emmanuel talked about this the other day. I felt like I was robbed because I saw it in 3D. So CGI, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I thought that the CGI, and Emmanuel pointed out that some movies just aren't made for 3D. So the one thing that I didn't like, and it was my fault, is because I saw it in 3D and I thought it was a little cheesy. So for it to be a $200 million movie, I would have thought that the CGI was much smoother than what it was. I thought Marvel went the extra step. They went the extra mile in this, and being sensitive to the fact that, you know, it was a movie about African culture. I think that white folks really play that line to a, you know, they don't want to offend blacks, and I think that's what they did in the movie. I remember months ago, like maybe a year ago, when I first saw the first trailer, the images that I saw was just the guys with the plate in their lip. Like, that was in the trailer a year ago. And then, before seeing the movie, and, you know, granted, I'm not the biggest Marvel enthusiast in the world. I know Marvel of the movies that's coming out. Like, I didn't read the comic books and everything. So even before this, I didn't know nothing of Black Panther. So it was a shock to see him in Civil War. I didn't know nothing about him. And then when I saw that he was coming out with his movie, I just knew from the images that I saw in the trailer in the beginning, they're exploiting us. Here it is, you know, there's a guy with a plate in his lip, and, you know, just the drums and the typical African exploitation that you see on film. I thought that that's Marvel just cashing in, but I do believe that they went an extra step in making sure that we wasn't misrepresented. The truth of the matter is that, and I don't know if it's current, I'm not going to pretend to know, but Africans did have plates in their lips, and I think that they didn't over-glamorize that. I think that that was just them touching on what Emmanuel said, mixing in a lot of culture to make sure that so many different cultures represented Wakanda in itself.
Yeah, and just to kind of touch on that, that's the primary difference. Even though Wakanda is a fictional African country, it's not a caricature of African culture the way Zamunda was in Coming to America. And you know, I just kind of wanted to touch on a little bit of Justin's points earlier, whereas your concern, I believe, was you know, the precedence that's been set with, you know, the reaction of black culture to black movies in the past. I'm not really sure how that can be justified when this movie is unprecedented. It's kind of like saying black people are going to act a certain way when we first got our first black president. We had no idea that we were even going to have a black president. So there's no way to really judge how we're going to act when we're going to be confronted with something brand new. And the other point is, I absolutely agree with Justin's point in terms of, you know, people should get in touch with their cultures and their history and, you know, do the research on Africa and all that. And I think that's what this movie inspires. I don't know about anyone else here, but when I went to the actual African stores, you know, shout outs to Kara Imports on 87th Street in Chicago, you know, the stores were filled up. People was sitting there buying dashikis and, you know, getting head wraps. They was sitting there talking to the salespeople to actually learn about the patterns and designs and all of that. And a lot of that was because of Black Panther. A lot of that was because of the hype that was generated before they even saw the movie.
I saw a brother, I was at a restaurant, and this was a couple of days ago. I saw a brother come into the restaurant, and I hate to profile, but it looks like just one of those dudes that he from the streets. I'll just say that. Okay. Just looks like it. I could be wrong, but just looked like it. He came in with his family, his girlfriend, wife, and a couple kids, and he had a dashiki on, right? And it was this energy that I got from him, as if, and I'm just guessing, that he just saw this movie, you know, being that he saw this movie and he came in and he had pride sitting down with his family with his dashiki on, and I couldn't help but to think that the Black Panther movie had something to do with that. So even if we're not quick or we appropriately do the research, well, not even do the research, just follow the trend when it's cool, is that a negative thing the fact that we're embracing our culture without doing the research?
Here's the thing for me. If you have to wait as a parent to institute who you are as a black person, and there's a deeper context to it, because we have to realize that there are two things that we deal with, especially as black people. We deal with African culture, and we deal with the culture we've created in America that is black culture. And we have to understand that we have to not only understand both and find a way to celebrate both, because there's a black culture that we've created on the back of African culture, but I believe it to be a completely separate entity from African culture, though it is a derivative. So while we can celebrate what we do as black people, we also have to understand that it has become and is separate now, today in 2018, from African culture. And we have to understand that difference. So when I talk about people not understanding where they come from, they're more concerned with, and should be more concerned with, actually black culture that they're created more so than African culture, but they should understand the context of both.
Is it a bad thing that they're gravitating towards it, even if they had no knowledge of it, but a movie like this is creating some type of awareness?
It's frustrating because on one hand, yeah, everybody wakes up in their own capacity at their own time. I understand that. That's not my issue. However, in 2018, in the age of information, it should not take a movie for you to understand where you come from as a person, and you've been black 30 years, you've been black 40 years, you've been black 50 years, and you've never taken the inclination with African ancestry, Polish ancestry, whatever, Native American ancestry, depending on what Hotep you talk about, we was already here versus we came over from Africa, whatever you want to talk about. The point is, you have access in 2018 to that information in any capacity that you wish. Everything is on YouTube. You have no excuse in 2018 not to find out who you are. And so when you come into Black Panther with these garbs on, and yeah, you're not wearing these garbs because, and I'm not going to say everybody, but from what I've seen, especially on my timeline, people are not wearing this African garb because they want to know what it is about Africa. Of course, the discourse is going to come when you go into the store to talk to the people who are selling it, because that's what it's going to be. But initially, they're going in there because they want a fashion fair. They're doing this to front for the people so that they can prove to white folks, look, I'm African. This is to rub it in your face about the shit that you've done to us all these years. That's what it's about. It's about fashion. It's not about knowing oneself and being prideful of what they have on when they don't even know what region Africa the shit comes from.
Be motherfucking shine. What is Justin missing from the effects of this movie?
A lot of shit. I mean, a lot of
Talking to the
shit.
mic.
I'm sorry, just a lot of shit. Everything that he says is just so... I mean, everything we say is our own opinion, but it's like his opinion is just... Jesus Christ. I mean, it's like, okay... Even if I'm a Christian and I've never read the Bible, but I embrace the philosophies of the Bible without researching it, what's the problem with that? If I'm a Muslim and I haven't read the Quran, but I embrace the ideas of it, regardless of because I saw a Muslim movie, I spoke to a Muslim on the street, what's the problem with it? And when it comes to these black people that you feel like, oh, they're just wearing these garbs because this is a movie. First of all, how do you know every individual that was in their dashiki that was wearing African garbs don't share your philosophy, haven't done the research? You're using generalizations on a great number of people without knowing each individual that walked into that movie. All I've seen is nothing but criticism, and I'm not just saying you. I saw the white conservative Ben Shapiro, who had the gall to say,
I like different ideas.
No, I listen to Ben Shapiro,
Ben Shapiro.
but this is where he lost me, at least on this one, is that he doesn't understand, quote unquote, black joy about the movie. He stated that, do you think white people go into the movie like, oh, that's my favorite white superhero, or that's my favorite white actor? And the reason why he doesn't understand it is because every movie is your favorite white actor. Every superhero movie is your favorite white superhero. But this is something that we honestly could have as our own. Not only is this a black superhero, this is the representation of a good black man, a strong black man. You didn't know drug sales, none of that. And just one thing I wrote down, I just want to say real quick. as when people say it's just a movie, and they talk about superhero movies, and you've had black leads and all of this in movies. The last superhero movie that we had with a black lead, and he was pretty much the only black character in the movie, was Hancock at 2008.
That's not true.
That what was the one before? I mean, after that?
No, Equalizer was definitely a superhero movie.
No,
Hey,
that
get
was
outta
an
here.
action.
Hey,
That was
get
an
outta
action.
here. Stop it, man.
That was an
I
action.
thought, wait.
That's
I thought he was about to actually say something.
That's a superhero movie.
No.
To me, that's a superhero movie. We've never
Again,
had a movie like that.
See,
where we
again,
had a
it's a
black
difference
Jason
between-
Bourne.
Wasn't it a
See,
TV show in the 70s?
See, again, it's a difference
It's never
between your opinion and a genre. And that's kind of what we keep discussing, is how your opinion is very overbearing.
Super Assassin is a
But
genre.
I'm just saying, you got Hancock, Catwoman, which sucked. You got 3 Blade movies. You got Steel, which sucked. You got Spawn, Blank Man, Meteor Man, and for the most part, what have you seen with a majority black actor? I mean, black leads, black co-stars, black direction, black cast that didn't have anything to do with slavery, romance, comedy, street violence, drug dealing, sports, or some type of music parody or biography.
That's it.
So
Okay, let me. The context has to be there
Before you do, wait a minute, before you do, Emmanuel, what are people like Justin missing from this movie that other people are embracing?
Logical consistency is what I would say.
Interesting.
Because what I'm confused about, and I want Brother Justin to go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong. On one point, you're saying we could be woke at any time, but then you judging the starting point at when they get woke. That's the problem that I don't get, because I'm trying to figure out what's the actual goal. Is it getting to that end point of appreciating, understanding, and acknowledging our roots, our African culture? Or is it the journey? Like, yeah, we got Google. Yeah, we got YouTube. We could be researching all these things. But again, if we all start at different parts in our lives, like, is that worse compared to, let's say, we learn about our culture 20 years down the road? And on top of that, like, what position do you have to judge other people's journey to their wokeness?
It's not that I'm judging, it's that I'm saying that there's context to that.
You are judging.
Yeah, I thought that was a
So
pretty...
understand
you
what
are
I'm about to explain it to you.
Okay.
What I said was, and clearly, is that everybody has their own time as to when they become woke. Now, we're talking about generationally, these things are disproportionate. So you're talking about somebody our age versus a millennial. That's something completely different. So you can't judge them the same. So when I say that everybody comes in their own time, generally I'm talking about younger people who didn't grow up in the X-Clan, Malcolm X, Spike Lee movie era of when we were discovering our blackness, which when you look at the people who are our age, they still haven't discovered who they are. They still haven't done the research. They're still doing the same shit they was doing in terms of whether they've gone and researched where they come from. So that's what I'm talking about, is people discover things in their own time. It's a generational thing. So we can't sit there and say, so I'm not being hypocritical. I'm saying that those of us who have had the opportunity and still have not taken advantage of the information that's available, especially when we've grown up in a time where the technology has been increasingly available to us versus the millennial, you can't sit here and say, well, oh, you're judging the wokeness. It's like, no, you've had the opportunity in 2018, you're 30, 40, 50 years old, and you still haven't taken the opportunity to find out who you are.
So hold on. It sounds very elitist to say stuff like that. It's basically like, I learned all these things. You got the same resources that I do. Why don't you pick yourself up and from your African bootstraps, and get just woke like me? That's the problem that it's sounding like from your argument, and that's the thing that I'm sitting here thinking, like, I don't care if you 4 years old or 40 years old to 80 years old. At the end of the day, if you happen to reach that endpoint of learning about your culture and appreciating it, what does it matter?
It doesn't. It's not any different, because we can just replace Marvel with Def Jam and all of these record companies from the late 80s, early 90s, where it was this trend, a trend where we just embraced our African culture back then, on a turn of gangster rap being dominant in the music industry the way that it was. And there was no knowledge behind me wanting to wear an African medallion other than the fact that I knew I was from Africa, and I knew that I wanted to represent myself outside of my African American culture. I wanted to represent my African part of myself. There was no knowledge behind that. But I do believe that that time when I was listening to Native Tongues, when I was listening to X-Clan, when I was listening to Ice Cube, without the knowledge, it did start the journey of me wanting to know who I was better. The sentiment that I got from you, Justin, is that's not enough. We should go even more. When this movie is an inclination, it raises the awareness that, you know what, Africa's right over there. I come from Africa. And I do share the thoughts of them where I say, how can that be a bad thing?
Because
Wait, I could be a nigga and I just don't get it.
Correction, calls nigga.
Because niggas have this thing in their brain where they just don't receive the information. So I think we're just not receiving the information.
No. Let me, since we shine brought that up, let me clarify what, since I keep hitting this, sorry, please. Let me clarify.
Hands on your lap.
Hands on your knees, hands on your knees.
So let me clarify what nigga, and via the arguably and controversially, the original definition of a nigga, which is supposed to be an ignorant person. So now let me clarify that as to say it's okay to be ignorant. It's not okay to stay ignorant. That's the contention, and that's what people miss. So they want to. I can call you a nigga, and you can be a nigga, and I can be a nigga in certain context, in certain contexts. However, it's not okay to stay a nigga, and that's what people miss. They get so caught up in being called a nigga that they don't understand that they have the ability and the power to change that.
So because I don't have a certain level of knowledge with a certain field that you feel like you are an expert in, that automatically makes somebody a nigga.
I was expert.
I mean, you talk like you are. You keep saying, if you haven't been to Africa, you can't talk about it. I mean, I don't know how often you go to Africa. I'm hoping it's just more than one trip.
Yeah.
Okay, you talk about your African foods that you eat. So what, I'm less African because I just haven't ate that? I mean, you know, it's a lot of delicacies in Africa. I mean, I know you say you studying Swahili, which is one of the easier African dialects to learn.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it's a lot of dialects.
Are you saying he took a cop out?
I mean, not necessarily a cop out to me, but I mean, it's just you sound like a person who's around a bunch of people with GEDs, but you feel like you better because you went to a 2-year college.
So the thing that V-Shine is consistently missing is context. And in what I said, so he likes to do the clickbait in what I'm saying versus understanding it within the context that I mean it. Because, I mean, you know, whenever I say that, you know, I always go back to the Boondocks episode with Martin Luther King. And he's talking about niggas in the context, and it applies to the people I'm talking about. Again, if you are a nigga, I have been a nigga, I can be a nigga in certain contexts. I'm not oblivious to that fact. I'm not saying that I'm coming from any place, but if it applies to you, I'm not going to say hit dogs holler. However, there's a context to everything I'm saying. Are niggas everywhere? Yes, niggas are everywhere. Am I saying all black people are niggas? No, I've never said that. In the screenshots you have,
I know.
I did not say that. But that's what you said.
I mean, well, the reason why I only made that, I made an assumption.
I got a question.
But you can't do that if I'm giving it to you as it is.
I got a question. If the end goal is black empowerment, can we agree that that's what we all would like?
Absolutely.
I don't know. I don't know at this point.
You don't know nothing? Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
Okay. Let's just say that black empowerment is the goal, right? Or black intellectual liberation. Would it not be far more productive to educate rather than demean niggas?
No, niggas don't listen.
They don't listen?
They don't.
So they're not worth educating or communicating to a certain capacity?
It's 2018. Google and all of that shit. You know, you ain't got...
Also, Google should educate us, you know, rather than we educate.
Google is a tool, not a teacher.
So do you think that it'd be more productive to be a teacher rather than, I don't know, an authoritative disciplinarian?
You can't teach niggas.
Okay.
Oh.
You cannot teach niggas. You have to teach people who are ready to not be niggas. You have to teach them. If people are still niggas, they're not ready to learn. But they're not in the headspace to learn.
But with staying on topic with the movie, I would say, and I hate really using this word, but niggas can be inspired.
Absolutely.
And when they get inspired, then they can be ready to learn.
Absolutely.
So when they get inspired and they're on the cusp of trying to learn something, you out there already cutting them down.
No. If you're allowing somebody else to dictate who you are as a person, then you are still a nigga.
Which goes to which goes to our point, which goes to my next point. And this is for Emmanuel. Safe to say that Hollywood is notorious for spreading propaganda.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah.
Is Black Panther exempt from this?
Propaganda. I mean, I agree with your earlier point in terms of everything is propaganda. It's just a matter of like, what is your message and who is your intended audience? Like I said earlier, this movie is unapologetically black. It is not trying to cater to white audiences. It's not whitewashed. It's not one of those things that has to like, I mean, they literally came up with a replacement term for cracker in colonizer. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Which they did.
You know, spoiler alert for my man here, you know, but
Which he sounds like.
But that's not, because if you've been to Africa, whatever.
Okay, if you've been to Africa,
So,
God
You know what
damn,
you would know what they call white people, but you know context, right? Okay.
I mean, I just you keep you
If
throw
you
that
don't
around.
know, you can't talk on
Then
things
why
that
the
you
fuck
don't
are
know.
you here? Then why the fuck are you here? Because you don't know.
Because I gotta teach niggas.
No, you gotta teach
oh, now you gonna teach. Now you gonna teach us.
niggas. You're not teaching niggas. You're not teaching niggas nothing.
One
but
day
to
we
make
over
an
here,
assumption.
one day
It
over
was
there.
a joke.
No, I'm just saying. You
Okay.
sound
It was a
just like
joke.
these white conservatives. I swear you do.
I know that was
I mean, you know it was coming because sometimes you may know how
Why
you
do I
sound.
not like white conservatives? Because white conservatives are coming from a place where there shouldn't have been a black movie, period. I've never said anything close to that. So
I mean,
how am
you
like,
pretty much close to
How?
saying it. 'Cause
Explain
you
how.
The first thing, again, I'm not trying to just pick on you, because there's
No,
other
it's-
guys and other people
I'm
out
here.
there.
Pick on
But
me.
it's like y'all compared Black Panther to Birth of a Nation.
Mhm.
That was a bad.
What the fuck was that about?
You can even
You
compare it
took
to I'm
a
Not Your
slavery
Negro.
movie, and then even you said it. Were you dressing up to go see Birth of a Nation? Who wants to dress up as a slave to go to the movies? Who wants to do that?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing that y'all say is it's cosplay. You can do that with any movie. They did it with Harry Potter. They did it with such and such and such.
okay, yeah,
So
and
why
now-
not?
now
Why
you see
can't
the
you do it with
fallacy in
Trina
your argument.
Cotway?
Hold on.
Hold
As
up.
someone who did dress up in African attire, this was not cosplay, and I was very, very cognizant of that. And I also tried to, because I held a watch party basically for a lot of the fans of my Facebook fan page, but also for the black youth in my community to come out and watch this movie. And one of the things that I told people was like, yo, dress in all black, Black Panther, you know, attire, if it has the symbol or whatever, or in African attire. I didn't say African costumes because, you know, I have friends, you know, from Africa, and even when I was trying to come up with my outfit and everything, at first I was going to come, you know, with the Zamunda lion print, you know, the skin and the big old gold thing. And then I started, but what I'm saying is what I was going to do was go as cosplay. And I realized that was actually more insulting to the intent of the movie, because they're not trying to make a caricature of African culture. So that's why I changed my perspective, and a lot of people have also changed their perspective and actually just worn African clothing from actual African stores. Now, and I do share in your sentiment to an extent that it is niggerish to go out there and wear these things as costumes, because I'm you know, of Haitian descent. If there was a Haitian liberation movie of Toussaint, if everybody came dressed up in voodoo wear, I'd have a real problem with that, because Haiti is much more than just voodoo. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, the fact that people are dressing up at least for me anyway, that was to pay homage and respect to African culture. That was not to, just do it for fun. Because let's be honest, people dressing up for Star Wars, people dressing up for Harry Potter, they doing that for fun. They're not paying homage to anything. They're just sitting here doing it because Harry Potter's my favorite character. But there's a deeper meaning and reverence when I believe black culture starts to dress in traditional African attire.
I have a question for Justin. What social responsibility in regards of the black community does Marvel have for the black community, being that, because me and you talked and you told me, tell me if I'm wrong, that the only issue with this movie was the fact that it wasn't filmed in Africa. Everything else hit on point.
That's one of the issues I have. I mean, the
only one would be one?
It's one of.
So what are the issues? And wait a minute. What's if they do? Because from what I'm gathering is that and going off what Emmanuel just said, black folks was just too excited. So I probably didn't want to, make a Black Panther mask, but I had a dashiki in the closet, so I'll just wear that. What social responsibility does Marvel have for the black community through Black Panther?
Other than for white people to create a platform for black people to use, absolutely none. And that's based off of white guilt, though. That has nothing to do with actual social responsibility. As far as I'm concerned, they kind of have to at this point, because after there's been such a demand for that, and not only the inclusion of Storm, because they have to include that because Black Panther was married to Storm, so they have to include that.
They're actually divorced.
Well, yeah, of course they're divorced now, but they were married at some point, so you have to get to that divorce.
Disney doesn't own the rights yet
to
the X-Men. Not yet.
Okay. But that's coming, because if Black Panther's any indication, there's definitely more black dollars to be made.
How can you make the distinction between a black man wearing a dashiki to pay homage to his culture and a black man wearing a dashiki as a costume? Like, how can you see how can you look at a person and tell what their mind frame is when they wore it? Because just like you say, if you normally don't wear it, you kind of wearing it as a costume. Absolutely. I don't go ballroom dancing or to elegant dinners all the time, but if the need arises, I will wear a tuxedo. So am I just dressed elegantly for the occasion, or would you consider that tuxedo a costume?
Well, you have to talk about whether or not it's who you are. Because there was a point in time in my life where I used to dress up all the time because I had a personal responsibility to the way I looked. That changed, so now I have a personal responsibility to the way I look because I like T-shirts that have a message, which is my heartbeat is for black liberation and black people. So you have to have your own internal reason as to do these things, which spoke to my reasoning of researching what a black culture and making sure I knew what the culture I came from. So if dressing up is what you do and what you know who you are, then you need to do that. But you have to, just like Farnsworth Bentley did, you have to come to a realization in who you are, because at one time he was a nigger. But then he decided he wanted to create Farnsworth Bentley and become who he was, and that included him needing to dress up in a way that represented who he was.
Because he had that act, that changed him from being a nigger.
It wasn't
because he changed his clothes.
It wasn't that he changed his clothes. If you read his autobiography, you'll understand that he not only changed his clothes were reflective of who he was, because he researched and he determined and distinguished who he was, and that was a reflection of the internal. That's what that was.
I just wanted to chime in on your actual question and kind of bring this back to center about Marvel's social responsibility with this film. And I think that comes into the production of the film. By hiring a black director and a black writer, and most importantly, a black producer, what you do is you protect the integrity of the black perspective that's projected in this movie. And what's important about that is the fact that, better yet, I don't really care why Marvel or the white man, gave us this opportunity. I don't care if it's white guilt. I don't really care why. I'm just glad we have this opportunity and the platform to put our message in our voice out there. And just a little piece for people to understand, Ryan Coogler, who's both the director and the writer for this movie, he was given the task to just write this however he wanted to. This is not a direct comic adaptation of Black Panther straight from the comics. This is his story, his interpretation, his vision, and his voice. So when I get all of that to be a standalone movie that has, some tie-ins to the larger Marvel cinematic universe, I can appreciate that because, again, it's not whitewashed.
He maintained the integrity of the Marvel story and still paid homage to African culture.
Of course,
yes,
it's
all of
whitewashed. The white man created the entire story.
But wait a minute, what, Jesse?
now,
Wait. To be honest with you, and this is my point. This is my point. I have a point.
The character.
I'm not the type that put stock into the Oscars or the Grammys or anything like that. I listen to the music that I like, and the way, their awards, or if they want them, don't hold weight to me. And we choose to we choose to give these entities more power than what they have. Like we're in the doctor's office yesterday. True story. My 10-year-old son, I was reading some comments off of Facebook, and I was talking to somebody on the phone about Black Panther, and I'm telling them that I have a podcast about it tomorrow. And, he's listening, and he says, Dad, and this is a true story. He says, Dad, why do people hate the Black Panther movie? I loved it. I said, some people, they have issues with Black Panther not representing black people in their correct light. And he said, well, if it's a fake movie, but he did say fictional. If it's a fictional movie, how are blacks misrepresented? So hold on. So, that goes into when we have a problem with the system, but we hold the system in regard of it validating us. The fact that we'll say Michael Jackson is a Grammy, Kanye, he won so many Grammys, and that validates him being this great artist, but at the same time, we're against the system. That's we're almost innate because of the conditions that we grew up in to be against the system. Why do we hold Marvel in the regard of what validates us? What gives us the go ahead, Emmanuel.
Look, I just really wanted to go back to this point because a lot of people like to regress back to, well, this was created by two white guys. Yes, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, two Jewish white guys came up with the concept of Black Panther. Now, context, right? Because I know that's Justin's favorite word, and I actually appreciate that. Black Panther was created in 1966. That's 2 years fresh off of the civil rights movement. Let's not forget what the condition and perception of black people were at that time. When you listen or when you watch the original Black Panther comic, when you read it, part of the storyline was how the Fantastic Four were so just mystified at how a black man was able to have all these nice things. Like something just didn't sit right with that.
Right.
Because keep in mind, they were a product of the times, right? So, the whole intent behind the creation of Black Panther was to be a counter stereotype to what black people were being perceived as.
What was rampant at the time.
What was rampant. Now, here's the other piece that goes into the evolution of Black Panther. For, I'm going to say about like 5, maybe 10 years on after Stan Lee and Kirby made Black Panther, white writers were starting to take this on. However, they could never fully capture the essence of Black Panther because, again, they weren't in Africa. They don't walk in black people's shoes. So to a certain extent, they could only take it so far. Now, this goes back to your question about Marvel's social responsibility. From a comic book standpoint, this is why they handed off the comic book to black writers so they could keep their perspective, not whitewash it, and preserve the integrity of blackness within the character of Black Panther.
And that's a great point, even going to the origin of Marvel. And once again, I'm not the biggest comic book fan, but I do know Stan Lee, even the difference between Magneto and Professor X was that they were adaptations rather of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. So there is some responsibility that he has when he's portraying particular characters in how sensitive black folks are.
And that's present in this movie as well.
I think so.
I know Justin hasn't
Justin hasn't seen the movie.
Justin hasn't seen the movie, but that dynamic is also
No,
presented.
I mean, I've got that from Killmonger, and I understand what that plays in Gaddafi.
So wait a minute. Wait. In context, they're not misrepresenting Africans.
I mean, it's based off of African culture. So it's not like these people and the culture that they're using are completely fictional and that they're making up like this African culture out of nothing.
But
they're
why is that a
basing this off of people that actually
misrepresentation, though?
exist and have an actual culture based off of hundreds of years.
Then, wait. Why is it that Africans around the world, when this movie debuted, are celebrating this movie? I haven't heard any Africans be like, F this movie, it's
And they took pride in it.
Why are Africans okay with it, but this African-American brother is saying, you speaking for them? Like, I don't understand that
I'm not saying what I'm saying.
It's misrepresenting them.
No, that's not what I said.
You said it's a
I've never
misrepresentation,
said
so-
I've spoken for Africans.
No,
Wait, stop. You have said that you have visited the continent. You have studied this culture. You are speaking for black. You are speaking for Africans.
How can I speak for Africans?
That's my question.
You
That's what we're here to find out.
The moment that you said that this movie was a misrepresentation of Africans, that's you speaking for Africans.
Countless of times. Nikki, can you play back, please?
When did I say it was a misrepresentation of
You
Africans?
said it several times.
You said it more than several times.
You said it's a misrepresentation and an appropriation. When in actuality,
were appropriating. I didn't say that we were appropriating Africa. That's not what I said. Go back on the tape. I said we were appropriating. I didn't say that they were appropriating Africa.
how can we appropriate us?
Wait, there's nothing wrong with positive appropriation. The problem is like when, for example, white people start to, appropriate our stuff and never give us credit for
Absolutely.
it. Hey, what's
Absolutely.
up, Justin Timberlake? You know what I'm saying? That's the problem. But it's a different thing when you look at something like Bruce Leroy, in the movie where there's a lot of appropriation of Asian culture, but at the same time, it's positive. He's giving homage to that Asian culture where he's, who's the master? You know what I'm saying? Like, all of that stuff is positive. So,
But is that Asian culture? Because if you go back, if we're going to talk
Absolutely.
about...
come on now.
Come on, what are you talking about?
If we're going to go back in history and we're going to talk about, like, actual Asian culture and where it comes from, if we want to really go back
it's
to
an
that...
aspect of Asian culture. It's not the entirety of Asian culture.
But who's to say which part they chose to appropriate and then claim as their own?
The actual
hundreds
actor.
Of years later, who's to
the
say
actual
that?
actor, he actually did an interview on that. It's on The Root. Check it out.
I have a question.
Root is one of the worst publications that has
There we
come out
go.
in the most... Oh
How
my
dare
God,
The
I
Root.
hate that.
How
I hate
dare
that
The Root.
publication.
I have a question for B-Shine. Do you think that the divide between black community is justified? Do you think that I understand your part, but do you see the opposing part? And is there any justification in what Justin is saying? Like, aside from the just, do you see his point at all? Do you think that we're Okay, go ahead.
Do I think that we misappropriating blacks or Africans or that part? No. I can see his frustration. I actually understand where he says that, you don't have to live the rest of your life as a nigga. You can change that. But it's his elitist, like he said, I'm sorry, it's very elitist. It's very, I'm smarter than you. And while we're not going to go super personal, ever since this movie came out, me and you've had words. I've watched you very intently. And I've watched every discussion you've had with other people. It didn't matter if it was a black woman, didn't matter if it was a black man. If they could be respectful, they could have been ignorant, they could have been intelligent, they could have sounded dumb. Every response was always the same from you.
I was consistent then.
You were very consistent. I would give you that. You were as consistent as AIDS. You were very consistent. You were killing the body. But I mean, it's just everything with you. It's like what I said to you. I said you're an intelligent dummy. And when I said that, I really meant that you have a vast amount of knowledge, but you lack the ability to hear anybody else's words. You lack the ability to see anybody else's point. You actually come off as one of those people that you hear the words that I'm saying, but you hear the words because you're calculating your response as opposed to actually trying to hear what I'm saying. And I hear what you're saying. I'm ready to attack your ass back, but I hear what you're saying. But I'm not just listening. But I'm not. But I'm not just listening to attack you back. And that's where me and you kind of...
Isn't that a generalization, though? Aren't you generalizing me because that's what you think I'm doing?
Well,
versus what it actually
a
is?
personal generalization is totally different than a mass one. I'm giving you my opinion.
A generalization is a generalization.
No, a generalization against one person and a generalization of a race or a big group is totally different. If you don't see that's apples and oranges, I don't know what else to say.
Hold on, before we get off, we are winding down on time, and I want to talk about something tangible about the movie. Is that the last time I checked, it brought in almost 400 million, and I'm sure that number is higher now, correct? Okay, I just want an answer from each one of you guys, and excuse me, of course that shows our buying power, but not knowing, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't want to say anything that I don't know. I know that from what it seemed, and Justin pointed out, that the majority of those dollars wasn't from the black community. That's what Justin said. So
at the projected time, it wasn't, but now it is.
Okay. So what is that to you? The fact that that movie shattered records the way that it did, it brought out the turnout that it did, and how does that? What is that indicative for us as black people? Just the turnout of the movie itself, not the social aspects of it, but the tangible part where it just shows that fifth largest movie ever coming out, top five.
Top 5 all-time opening weekend.
What is that indicative to you in terms of the black community?
And we hold a lot of power. They say that, well, we're becoming the majority, but right now we're the minority. But as a people that's a minority, we spend a majority of money. I've always said that when it comes to getting our points across, instead of picketing and looting with riots, even though it's propaganda that, that's the white guys got people doing it. At the end of the day, I've always said, when they do stuff we don't like, let's hurt their pockets. When Christmas time come with them Christmas sales, them Thanksgiving, Black Friday sales, they make projections on how much money they're about to take in, and they make projections by the regions and the people. If we were able to channel a unified voice, okay, you did this, we take our money from this area. We want this, we put our money into this area. And, it's just pretty much unified, Planet of the Apes. One monkey weak. All monkeys strong. I'm sorry. It's just,
we talking about Black Panther. You going to the monkeys?
No, it's just an analogy. But we're stronger together.
Analogy for
Come on now.
You gonna bring up the monkeys?
And I gotta go with Justin. Bro. If you associate yourself with a monkey, then you're gonna be a monkey. Don't be a monkey all your life.
There was some nigger monkeys in that movie.
I would rather be a nigga than a monkey, man. Come on, man.
There was some real nigger monkeys in that movie. Emmanuel.
Yes, sir.
Effects of the actual turnout of the movie, and what does that say for black people?
So I'm gonna take this twofold. So I'll talk about the effects. The first effect is the matter of the fact that when we show up and show out, especially with our dollars, not just after the movie, but I'm talking about even the pre-sales. What that does is that sends a direct message to not just Marvel, but to all studios. Yo, this is a vote. We are voting with our dollars that when you do us right, we will show up and you will get our money. So that on the business side of things, that helps us get more, and I would say better representation in the film industry. Now, let's go on the back side of things.
So wait a minute, just before you go on, me and Justin had this conversation. There is progress, albeit slow progress, that we made this movie, that we had a turnout, even if from the top where it's marble, which is white, that is progress.
It is progress. And the thing is, we always have to start from somewhere. You know, we don't have Disney money. I don't care how collective we get. Disney is like a monster. Okay, they're a juggernaut. But the thing that I do want us to understand is like the bigger picture with all this. This movie had a $200 million budget. It was primarily shot in Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta, Georgia has about a 54 to 60% population rate of black people. Matter of fact, the majority of or a good part of this movie was shot in Tyler Perry's production studio. It was actually the very first movie in Tyler Perry's production studio. So when we talk about Marvel's got to give back to the black community, who do you think that Tyler Perry hires? He predominantly will hire minorities, especially black people, and you're talking about a black-owned business that just got a good chunk of this Marvel budget. So, you know, and what that does is the fact that it opens up the doors of opportunity to basically say, hey, you can do business with Tyler Perry or other black businesses. You can hire these black writers and directors and give them just as much of a budget as you want to, because if you notice, Ryan Coogler specifically likes to work with Michael B. Jordan. Imagine if Michael B. Jordan were to pass that down, pay it forward to another actor or up-and-coming director that just so happened to also be black. You know, I mean, Tyler Perry didn't get his start unless another black person like Oprah were to give him that handout. So the thing is, we have to use these opportunities when they come, because what ends up happening is we can pass that down and actually internally help ourselves. So if we're going to criticize this movie for being against black culture or against black progression, I just believe that we're losing sight of the bigger picture, because it does trickle down to us.
Like
Disney's going to make their money. Disney's going to make their money.
But it's still, but you know what? It's
economics is going to trickle down.
But it's still positive.
Saying, but it's actually proven. Unlike trickle-down economics, which has not been demonstrated, this does, because again, Oprah got big, she put on Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry started employing, damn near every black person has been in his movie. Those people get exposure. Now they in their own TV shows. Now they get to be in the position to hire other black people. The point is that this wasn't the case 20, 30 years ago. Okay, so we're getting to that place. It might not be as fast as everybody wants it to, but we getting there.
Your thoughts on the tangibleness of what the movie brought out and the effects of the black community?
We got to remember that this is an African-American take on African culture.
You mean a fictional movie?
It's still based off of actual people. You can't negate that. You can't just be like, they didn't just make up a fictional African culture, make up a fictional African clothes, make a fictional African languages. This is based off of actual people that actually exist. So you can't jump and let me finish. I didn't interrupt y'all. Okay. You cannot sit here and straddle the fence versus, well, this is reality. Oh, this is now it's fiction. Oh, now it's reality. Now it's fiction. You can't do that with this movie. It's going to be one or the other. And if you're going to leave it as fiction, then you need to leave it as fiction. But people are taking it to heart like it's the real thing. Because if we reverse this and had an African cast tell the story of Luke Cage, then it would be a different story.
So I'm going to ask the question again. What are the tangible effects of the box office numbers that the movie has, and how does that affect black people?
Personally, being the cynic that I can be, I believe that it's going to be just like anything else we've done. We get hyped over the shit, and the shit blows over, and we go back to the usual shit that we do. You know, and no. No, I didn't. That's not what I said. That's B-sign insertion. I did not say that. But what I will say is, I love my people. I understand who they are as a totality. So I accept the niggas as much as I do the quote-unquote black people and those who don't associate with either term. So while I can talk about niggas, just like we talk about any person in our family that ain't on shit and don't do shit and don't make shit out of their lives, I can still love them even though they still niggas. So when I talk about niggas, I still want them to get their shit together and I can still love them, but they still niggas. So, I mean, when we talk about what this movie can do, it's a good positive image. My contention is that I don't believe that we're actually going to do what we say we're going to do within this hype. I'm reserving judgment to see what we're going to do with what this movie is a year later. I'm really excited for, that's what I'm really excited for, to see if motherfucking niggas prove me wrong, which I hope they do. But based on the precedent of what's happened in cinema and what's happening in TV, I don't believe that's going to be the case.
Because you keep judging it from the past of the bullshit.
Yeah, I mean,
that's, you keep saying
You
with
have
this,
to.
this, no, you
That's
can't.
That's why precedent
movie,
exists.
But
That's
what is our
literally why
past?
precedent exists.
But what is their past? Slave movie, slave movie, slave movie. Martin Luther
That's
King.
not always
slave
been the case.
Movie, slave
No,
movie.
it hasn't.
Malcolm
That's,
X.
that's
You know,
not been the case. We know that. Queen of Quatway just came out. That was a positive movie.
absolutely.
So why?
But the quantity doesn't add up.
But does that matter?
Yes, it does.
matter.
We're
It's
being
all about-
saturated with bullshit.
It's all about representation. This is why white people don't have an issue with representation, because as many BS movies that they might have portraying them as rednecks or racist or whatever, they got just as many positive images in their films. So yes, quantity does matter.
Is that
But
an
I do-
excuse in 2018? Is that an excuse? Can we keep saying that the white man, the white man, the white man? At what point do we say, look, fuck what they gonna do. We got Tyler Perry Studios. Even if we put that shit, Tyler Perry literally made his living and his name off of him doing independent productions that got him to the place he got today. Why can't we support people that don't do the bullshit that Tyler Perry puts out in terms of the emasculating man, which speaks to Brian Shine's point? But why can't we support him doing something low budget like he was doing with Medea, and then make that a fucking phenomenon instead of using white people as the scapegoat for bullshit?
If we live in a capitalistic society, and this is the problem that I have with people that have this argument, because I think that it's appropriate to have this argument when it's trending on the same way that we embrace African culture when it's trending. Now, I do know Justin, and I respect Justin. You know what? Actually, the first time I met Justin, because of his consistency of him wanting to elevate black culture, I met him in a dashiki. I came to the California Clipper, and I ain't gonna lie, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna rock my dashiki today, because this nigga be talking a whole bunch of shit about black folks, so, you know, but I had my Jordans with it, so I was doing it. But if we live in a capitalistic society, it's my culture. It's my culture. Dashiki with the red and white.
African and American, that is, he was representing both sides.
Absolutely, I agree.
For better or worse.
But if we live in a capitalistic society, and I mean this respectfully, why don't you leave? And I'm not saying leave. No, I'm not saying
really
leave.
do the if you don't like America.
It's
leave
look. Wait.
But you know what's fucked up? But I was thinking the same shit.
No, that's not. You know what? That's not an extreme statement to ask. I mean,
Okay, that's a fair point.
if me personally, I understand that there's a hierarchy in this in terms of I have a contract with DirecTV, and I'm an independent contractor. I don't work for anybody, but as much money as I make, DirecTV makes more. So I'm not confused with the fact that I am, even though I'm empowering myself to a degree, I'm empowering DirecTV because that's the one that I get, you know, that's who pays me to a degree. So if I have a problem with DirecTV, I'm not going to sell for DirecTV. That's my logic. If you have a problem with the fact that our dollars are being misappropriated and it's going to the white person, and it's not a true representation of the core people that's actually involved in the film, and I mean this respectfully, why are you here? Why not move to Africa? Why not be a part of it the way that you're saying we need to be a part of it?
Or why go see the movie at all?
Or why go... Oh! Why go see the movie at all?
Well, because I can. Hey, okay, let's again, my favorite word, as you said, and is context. You have to understand what I'm saying within context. I can complain about something and still be here. Just because just because I don't like the way my steak is made doesn't mean I have to go to the Cordon Bleu to learn how to make fucking steak. No, motherfucker, your job is to make the goddamn steak.
We just asking, why are you eating that steak then?
No, because I can eat the steak.
No,
but I don't have to go to Le Cordon Bleu just because I don't like the way this motherfucker makes my steak. Make my steak the way I like it. But I don't have to go to cooking school just because you don't make the steak
True. Wait, Brian,
That's the point.
Wait a minute. But it cheapens your argument in terms of the embodiment of because the embodiment of how Africans are supposed to benefit all across the board from this movie, but yet we're still...
They didn't shoot it in Africa.
I'm sorry?
They didn't shoot it in Africa. So how are Africans supposed to benefit?
But that's my point. You're saying that they should. You're saying that they deserve more than what they got in this movie, but at the
they
same...
Didn't get nothing.
Except
their culture exploited to a certain extent.
Ain't it movie theaters in Africa? So when they show that movie, don't the movie theaters in Africa get some type of that money?
You know how they benefit? They benefit by not being represented as just living in huts, chucking spears, and chasing animals. That's how they benefit, at least on one side of the aisle.
Just to let you know, in the downtown scene of Wakanda, when they were going, the aerial shot, there was a hut.
There was.
On a skyscraper.
That's because part of the movie is that there's an aspect of Wakanda that embraces traditionalism.
Of course.
And they don't want to be in the futuristic stuff.
Of course.
So
and I get that.
That's by choice. That's not because they are just dirt poor and they about to be on an infomercial with some white lady asking for money. That's a choice that they made.
That's why I say you have to understand context, because unfortunately there are some people that are living in districts, because I've been there and I've seen them personally. I've also seen the futuristic part of that, where I was just showing last week, I was just showing some older black women video, which I have with me if you'd like to see it, of when I was in Africa, and I showed them, and the way it looks is that it looks just like here, and they were like, this is Africa? They had no fucking idea that Africa was as modern as this, as the shit looks just like this, and they had no fucking idea.
So it's safe to say that your disdain is the fact that we lack the knowledge, but this movie is a trigger point because we're using it as a trending topic to a degree, correct?
To a degree, yes.
Which he's also using. And I just got to say this. I'm sorry.
I agree.
I've been needing to say this.
I agree.
This is the second contradictory statement he's made.
I
know how I like my steak. I don't need to know how to make a steak. That goes right back into the point of we saying that I can love my African culture. I don't necessarily need to do the research on it. And that is just happened. So the first one you missed. No, we're going to go with that. But now I just wanted to make that statement. Corey,
yes.
In the order, 60 seconds.
Let me hold on. I just want to throw this out there because we're going to do context. Ryan Coogler, writer and director, went to Africa before he made this movie. He went to Africa multiple times to get that context so that way he can do whatever he had to do to represent things accordingly. So
he did. But it's also like white folks.
I understand you kept saying, who's been to Africa? He's went to Africa. The director and writer.
He went to Africa, but look. I don't mind Black Panther. Contrary to popular belief, I don't really have a problem with it. I have a problem with the fact that people are not putting it into proper context, which is the theme of my disagreement with my gentleman friends here. If you don't have context, yes, he went to Africa. Did he choose to shoot at anything in Africa other than the aerial shots where he didn't have any part of? No, he didn't. Do you know how much economic power that could have brought? But see, that's an excuse. You can go to Argentina, you can go to Korea, you can go to Atlanta, which of course is local, so that's not a big jump. But you can go to all these places, but you can't go to Africa. But you can use their culture and their language and their hair in order to tell a message. But you can't empower the people by putting economic dollars into their society for their actual benefit, so that the next time they can do everything in Africa on location if they need be.
I just want to point
That's
out.
the excuse. There's no studio in Africa. There's no, you can't shoot there. Well, motherfucker, if you don't put no dollars in there, of course they won't.
I just want to
But
point
there are
out.
studios there.
I just want to point out. Brian and Emmanuel are taking notes on the same piece of paper. Emmanuel, go ahead. 60 seconds.
That's it.
To wrap it up. Yes.
Look, I hate this false dichotomy because what ends up happening is we essentially get into this crabs in a barrel mentality, right? And it's not productive to black upliftment and empowerment at the end of the day. I mean, yes, they could have went to Africa, but guess what? Production costs would have went sky high. That's what happens when any business has to do international stuff. So I'm okay with, if you didn't go to Africa, at least you did business with African American businesses. So because at one point, what do you want? Do you want to uplift African Americans? Do you want to uplift Africans? We have to make a decision at some point, and I'm okay they picked at least one of them because again, it's still a business. But at the end of the day, this movie is culturally important because at the very least, it does raise the level of awareness for African culture. It does raise the level of representation in a positive light of black people not being in chains, not coming from a white perspective of what they think black culture is. And it also provides opportunities for us to get more of this down the line. So Black Panther is important for way more reasons than just, being a good Marvel movie.
I'm gonna say it real quick. Okay. Okay. Black Panther, important to me. Black Panther's the reason why I wasn't ready to come and whoop your ass. We had our words.
Try.
We had our words.
Word in that sentence is try.
I tried to whoop your ass.
60-second wrap up.
I'm just saying. Black Panther's the reason why I didn't want to try to whoop his ass was because as black men, T'Challa showed me, you a Killmonger, I'm a T'Challa. I wanted to mend the bridge, and I would rather be on this show with you. I'd rather look at you as a brother than look at you as a nigga that I wanted to put my size 12 down his throat.
You telling me Killmonger's a nigga?
Huh?
You calling Killmonger a nigga?
Yes.
If you most people in this
Another topic for another show.
But most black people are like Killmonger's the real hero in that motherfucking movie.
And it's a lot. And what did you say? And I'm gonna say what you say. Niggas are everywhere. But anyway,
coming over, baby.
Context. Anyway, at the end of the day, I feel like Black Panther is a very important movie for black people, not just because of the money it generated for black people or the white man or the Mexicans that did the shit. None of that. It's an important movie because it's one movie that I have seen where black people are represented as intelligent, as smart, as strong, as family, as powerful, not as slaves, not as drug dealers, not as thugs, not as any negative stereotype. There was no negative stereotype, and as much as I just said, Killmonger is a nigga, he was one of the best Marvel villains ever, and I send it over to Corey.
My thoughts on the movie was, I think that it's ironic that Wakanda is the most technically advanced city in the world, country in the world, the richest country in the world. Marvel put this out to a degree that can be interpreted as propaganda to whites, and yet our argument is, should we dress up to go to the movies or not? I do think that this movie is necessary because this is in the midst of all the Marvel movies, and to be honest with you, in terms of superhero movies, Marvel's the go-to, correct? I mean, it's pretty much the standard.
Everybody checking for DC Comics, fuck them.
Yeah. Any hoot. Y'all said DC Comics?
Fuck DC Comics.
DC
Fuck them. They only put my man out there. Fuck DC.
Right. So
answer to Marvel.
That's about it.
So it was definitely refreshing to see, how much detail that they put into maintaining the integrity of the African culture. I do see Justin's argument in terms of it would be nice for us to do this with more knowledge of ourselves. But I don't think that that's a difference maker if I don't know my culture, and if I do know my culture and I go see this movie. I think that this movie is fictional, and it does a great job in terms of maintaining the integrity of African culture, and I just think it's a great storyline. I don't look at, and this is just my perspective, I don't look at these types of movies, these types of entities to save me. I'm not a political person. I pull my own bootstraps up. So there's no social responsibility that this movie has for me other than the fact of it did dispel what I thought that they were going to misrepresent, when the reality of it is we do have remember the state. We did have plates in our lips. We did have a woman that, was great with spears. And this is something that I have to realize. This is part of my culture. And I'm going to learn it more to make sure that they represented it right. So,
can I get 20 seconds?
Of course.
Seconds. I'm sorry. B-Shine. I'm sorry. Last thing. B-Shine hate all women. B-Shine think all women are bitches. But in Black Panther, it was so fucking beautiful to see these strong black women. And I can't say what I want to say because this nigga ain't even seen the movie. But,
Yeah, don't spoil it.
Right now,
Hey, wait.
No, it's not a panda.
Don't spoil it for him. He ain't seen it yet. Right.
It's not a panda. I love seeing African American women, and anybody that has watched my show, I always say it's a difference between women, bitches, and hoes. And that movie, there was not one bitch, there was not one hoe, there was nothing but strong black women.
It was.
I'm done.
And on that note,
Do I get a wrap up? I don't get a wrap up?
Man, we all
got it.
I didn't have no wrap up. Everybody got to get their final
tuning
Jerry
in.
Springer thoughts and shit.
Camera on me. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Live on Lakeshore Drive.